Fatal Attraction is a modern reimagining of the 1987 psychological thriller about a woman who becomes obsessed with a man after a short-lived affair, ultimately leading to dire consequences. The new show stars Lizzie Caplan and Joshua Jackson. It premiered with 3 episodes April 30th on Paramount+. On this podcast, we discuss the most recent installments of a different series every show. It's May 5th. Welcome to today's episode. So you had to do a lot for this one. You had to watch the movie, which you were supposed to do for your film class years ago, but then you skimped out on that. And then you watched 3 episodes that came out April 30th on Paramount, like I said in the intro. I want to kick this off with a little speed round, 1-minute true or false questionnaire on the movie itself. Things you might not know, but it'll just be fun. So keep track of your answers and we'll go over them at the end.
Okay.
Starting now. Film has universal acclaim.
True.
Glenn Close disagreed with the ultimate ending.
True.
Michael Douglas liked the ultimate ending.
False?
One of the working titles was Lethal Attraction.
True, I'll say, yeah.
Highest grossing film of 1987 in the world.
True.
Alex Forrest is ranked number 7 on AFI's 100 Years of Villains, 2 spots ahead Nurse Ratched.
Yeah, I'll true that as also.
They used a real dead rabbit in the bunny boiler scene.
False.
1987 was ironically the Zodiac year of the rabbit.
False.
It was adapted into a play in 2014.
False.
It was almost adapted into a television series in 2015 starring Megan Fox and Jenna Dewan.
True.
They used a real tape of a woman stalking a man to write some of the dialogue.
True.
And last one, Brian De Palma agreed to direct the film but wanted Michael Douglas gone, so De Palma was let go.
False.
Okay, so I had only 2 more to go, but we did cross the minute barrier, and all of them were true.
All of them were true?
All of them were true. So Brian De Palma was attached to... He's the reason it got greenlit, because it got passed over like 20 different directors, and he said yes. He found out Michael Douglas was attached. He said no.
Yes.
The other ones that you said no to, did you say no that the 2015 pilot didn't happen?
No, I said that the 2014 play didn't happen.
It did, and it was the same writer, too. Same writer as this show, same writer as the original movie, same writer as, yeah.
And then I heard about the alternate ending years ago, so I knew that at least one of the actors had to have at least not liked it.
Glenn Close loved the original ending, but test audiences did not. And so they had to end up switching it. And she had to be convinced, I think, by William Hurt to end up going in that direction.
And they used a real rabbit in the rabbit boiler scene?
It was a dead rabbit, and it smelled disgusting.
Oh.
So they were able to use that. So this was the first time you watched the movie. Tell me what you thought of that.
Yeah, okay, so I do want to mention something really fast. For the past couple days, like you said, I kind of been mad at myself because I never saw Fatal Attraction, even though I was signed to watch my senior year of college. But I remember I saw the first 30 minutes of it, and then I turned it off and never finished it. But then 3 things started to happen. 1, I heard Glenn Close was going to be in the movie, and I didn't remember her in it. 2 was, as I was watching the film, none of it really seemed familiar to me. And 3, most telling, we were a good 30 minutes of the way through, and I realized that there was no leg cross scene. And it
So
was
you've been watching
that
Basic Instinct
moment
the whole time?
that I was actually assigned Basic Instinct, and I confused it with Fatal Attraction.
Ironically,
Michael Douglas is in both of them,
yes,
right?
of course. He had kind of a career where in the 90s where he would just do all these like romance thrillers. Sharon Stone actually tried out for the part of Alex and didn't get it. This was before she was super famous. Basic Instinct obviously kicked off her career. What's weird about that movie is that she has come out saying since many times that she didn't okay the leg crossing scene. Like that she didn't know that she was going to be that was going to be shown on camera.
No, I remember hearing about that.
And so, in a similar way, Glenn Close has been both pro the movie and also against the movie.
At different times?
No, not at different times. She's more like, it wouldn't be made today. She still has like the knife that was used, but she doesn't like how Alex was kind of presented and how her mental disability wasn't fully given a like fleshed out.
I will say that the show does try to, I guess, kind of go after that a little bit.
Should we transition to the show, or have you given all your thoughts?
Well, let me say, overall, my thoughts on Fatal Attraction, and I'm sure it was kind of maybe the first movie of of its kind to do something like this, make just the like woman the complete villain. But
Not the first, but definitely one of the. It led to a bunch of other thrillers
right.
like it.
It was mildly entertaining, but the film is so crazy and after a while so long, even though it's only 2 hours, that I would say it's hard to really get into. I would give it like a 6 out of 10.
Okay.
Like a tomato on Rotten Tomatoes, but in the lowest form. And that kind of transitions into my next point. There are a lot of shows or movies that come out that are based off of shows or movies back in the 90s or 80s. Just a few that I have written down here are True Lies, The Santa Clauses, Quantum Leap, Willow, Roswell.
Yeah, this was greenlit with like Flashdance and a ton of other ones that are going to be coming out on Paramount Plus in the next few years.
And it's not just the fact that those shows are like worse than the material that they're based off of. It's also
most of them are.
It's just, but it's also the fact that they are bad shows, like just in general.
Well, the thing is that like even Lizzie Caplan on all her interviews has started with that. With like as soon as I heard that this was a reimagining of a classic, I was like, I don't want to do it unless there's a reason for it. But she seemed to hint that there was a reason for it.
Well, I'm waiting for the one that breaks the mold and is like better than the movie or just good.
I
in
think
general.
there have been. You just can't think of them off the top of your head, but they're few and far between.
Yes, and this is one of the shows that is not.
It's not as good.
I see that it's just it's bad. They milk it really for all it's worth. I mean, like how many episodes is this supposed to be this season?
This is going to be a total of 8 episodes.
It takes them. Every single episode is way too long. By the way, it's almost an hour for every single one, and it takes them until the end of the first episode before Dan and Alex actually meet and start flirting with each other. I mean, they meet throughout the episode, but I'm talking about like in a flirtatious scene in reference to the movie. They meet at a bar and they start talking, and that takes a full hour.
Yeah,
and then it takes even after a full hour, including episode 1, before they even start having an affair. In the movie, it took 20 minutes, and then they find like Glenn Close and Michael Douglas finally sleep together.
Yeah, I was going to save this point for later, but originally the movie was based off a short by the same guy who wrote the movie, and then that was turned into the film. Then it was turned into the play, which plays are usually a little bit longer than films, and now it's a mini-series. The thing just keeps getting longer, and they keep on fleshing it out. So I'm wondering what's coming next. Is it going to be like a full-blown 20-episode series, and then what after that?
A virtual
like a franchise?
Reality series or something when we get there?
The point is they fleshed it out for a reason, and they went into the future, right? So like Alex Forrest, who dies in the movie, how does she die in the movie?
She gets shot by Beth.
She gets shot by Beth, and that is the wife of the person that she was having the affair with, Dan.
Right.
And in this show, that's not what happened, or what happened that caused Dan to end up in prison?
So this is the strange thing. It starts off with Dan. He's at a parole hearing.
Yes.
And he basically admits that he killed Alex. Like he just.
So they rewrote the ending of the film.
Well, yeah.
Is he lying?
It's second-degree murder, as they say. So I guess that they are kind of rewriting the ending of the movie. But in the future storyline, what they're going to do this season is try and prove that Dan actually didn't kill Alex, even though he says in the first scene.
So he did it to get out of parole.
Yeah, to get parole, yeah.
Yes, and then now he's trying to reconnect with his daughter. So he just did it to get out of prison.
Yes, but he also tells his daughter at the end of the first episode in the future storyline that he's going to try and prove that he actually didn't kill Alex. Okay. That is what they leave that storyline off of in the first episode, and it just seems like I didn't understand really.
Having seen the movie, it kind of seems like a waste of time to rehash something that you've already sort of seen the end to.
I feel like it would have been able to cut down the time, which would have really helped with this show, but also you could have maybe put even an episode or 2 episodes at the very end of this of them in the future doing whatever they wanted to do, because I'm sure that if you were to see, you said it's going to be 8 episodes, say 6 episodes of everything that happens in this past storyline, and then you were to see the last 2 episodes, see Dan years later.
Like a forward flash?
Yeah, see Dan years later come out of prison and reconnect with Beth, like you see in the first 3 episodes, reconnect with
I've seen shows pull that off or try to pull it off, and to mixing results.
Well, let me tell you here, in the future storyline, it just continually dragged the show down, which is strange considering you were seeing what was happening in the future. This was all new stuff that was supposed to be going on.
The second and third episode, though, they take you back to the past, right?
Yeah, well, that was the thing that I liked most probably about this series, was the third episode, because Lizzie Caplan, I've only seen her mostly in comedies. In fact, most recently, I guess saw her in The Party Down.
What's your favorite performance of hers from Party Down, Cloverfield, The League? I know she was also in Fleischman is in Trouble this year, and you never saw her in Masters of Sex, which is obviously the show that this is compared to the most for her career.
I know it was really early on, but probably Party Down.
How about Undeclared? She was also in Freaks and Geeks.
I never saw Undeclared that many episodes or Freaks and Geeks really, but yeah, like Party Down is probably my favorite performance of hers.
How about Joshua Jackson? Now that we're just
no,
about
because I wanted to talk about Lizzie Caplan.
I know we'll go back, but I'm just curious now because Dawson's Creek, The Affair, Dr. Death, Fringe. Scream.
He was in The Affair. That's funny because like
I
felt like The Affair was something to compare this to. Also, obviously, Love and Death, which was the show I just watched, and then you have Bull because there was a lot of scenes that took place in a courtroom because Joshua Jackson is kind of like a lawyer a little bit. He's wanting to become a judge. In fact, in the first episode, he's not able to become a judge, and that's a big deal for the show. And then also,
but what was your favorite performance of his?
Well, I haven't seen him in a lot.
Huh. So you never saw Fringe?
No.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you something that you probably didn't know. He hosted SNL in 2000 with
In 2000?
Yeah, he was 21, 22 years old.
I didn't know he was famous back then.
Dawson's Creek was a huge show. Okay. Anyways, Lizzie Caplan in the last episode, the third episode.
I didn't feel like she was going to be able to pull off the role as well as Glenn Close did.
Why? Because people really like Glenn Close in that role. She almost didn't get it because the director thought she was going to be the worst person for it. They told the agent, I think, who called in saying that she was interested, please don't make her come in because she's just going to be awful for this. And they had I think over 30 really famous actresses going for the part, and she ended up getting it just because of her energy and her acting ability. But
you're talking for the movie, right?
Yeah, for Glenn Close.
Yeah, no, and I'm saying Glenn Close did a good job.
She's not traditionally the most attractive person, and so that's what they were surprised by. Lizzie Caplan is more, I would say, probably more attractive.
But I didn't feel like when we got on the second episode, because you get hints of her being crazy. That's really in the second episode when that happens. I didn't feel like she was pulling it off too well, but in the third episode when it focuses all around her, that's why
her
I liked
perspective.
The most. Yeah, not only her perspective, but every scene that we had seen her in up until that point, even small scenes in the first episode when Dan and Alex are kind of staring at each other, you got more context for. So you will literally see parts in the first two episodes that you see again in the third episode.
And that worked, because I was afraid that would come across as, when you said they were too long as episodes, I was like, oh no, is it because they keep on repeating the same scenes?
Well, no, that they only really do that for the third episode, but that's why I'm saying it did work. Because you understood more about her character.
I'm sure that the creator of the show, Alexandra Cunningham, who wrote some of the episodes and also is the force behind this, is going to be very happy you said that, because I think that was the reason they decided that this was worth it. Steven Spielberg came in there saying, you guys should make a limited series anthology to Fatal Attraction, and then they did it. But I think this was the whole gist behind how it was going to be different. So that's at least a very strong pro for the show.
Yeah, and also just talking about the two leads, Joshua Jackson as well. I feel like both of them did a good job. I like both of them and everything I've seen them in so far. So, I mean, I thought that their chemistry worked well. Also, in the first episode, there is a part where Alex is talking to another judge about not letting someone off the hook for getting behind the wheel drunk.
Sorry, Alex has a completely different job in the show than she did in the movie, right? She's a part of the lawyers.
Yeah.
She's not a paralegal, but she might also be a lawyer, right?
She just works in the same place that Dan does.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and later on in that episode, Dan gets behind the wheel drunk and then crashes his car, and I thought that was a nice bit of foreshadowing. Also, the series looks nice. There's a rooftop scene that happened in episode 2 where Dan and Alex are talking to each other, and I thought that it looked really beautiful from there.
I should say Alexander Cunningham also did the Dirty John show. That was her creation as well.
Wait, didn't we just talk about Dirty John 2 episodes ago?
One of my questions
for Love and Death?
Yes, for Love and Death. But for that, I wanted to compare Alex's character to Candy Montgomery, the real person, and ask you, does it make Candy seem more stable and level-headed? Because you said at the time that Elizabeth Olsen came off as a psychopath.
Yeah.
Right? Does this make her seem more, sane?
No, actually, because I still feel like...
Are there similarities between the two?
There's similarities between the two for sure, but I think that Love and Death was based off a true story, correct?
I just said it was, yeah.
In this, it's Lizzie Caplan's insanity, Alex's insanity is more, it's smaller. Because, for example, in the third episode... It's smaller in comparison.
Candy never dunked a bunny or whatever that was.
In the third episode, what happens is Lizzie Caplan, or I should say Alex. Sorry, I keep calling her.
Yes.
Alex, she is speaking to a neighbor that I guess she used to be friends with, and that neighbor has kind of stopped contacting her, isn't like returning her calls, isn't answering her when she's like knocking on his door or anything like that.
Yeah.
And she straight up decides to threaten him by being like, I always have time for friends. I always am able to do that, and you're not. And then
a little bit of an obsessive compulsive.
Yeah.
Or I think she was diagnosed, people have said, with multi-personality disorder or something.
Well, one of the first scenes we see in the third
borderline
episode,
personality disorder, my bad.
One of the first scenes we see in the episode is she's calling a therapist, and the therapist breaks up with her over the phone because apparently the therapist you can't, I guess, have a therapist in different states if they're not enrolled as a therapist
if
in
you
those
say
states.
So.
That's what they were saying, because I think they live in California at that moment.
Huh.
So you're really just seeing kind of her unravel into these manic episodes.
So had she kept her therapist, maybe this wouldn't have happened.
Yes, because even later on in the episode, she's trying to call her therapist, being like, I don't care if you can't work in California legally. Like, I really need your help here. Like, I'm losing it. Which was nice to actually see some humanity, because even in the movie itself, one of the reasons why I felt like it was so over the top was because you never saw Alex's humanity at all.
That's
like
the point.
Yeah, sure, they had an affair, but she just got crazy afterwards.
Also,
here, her craziness actually makes sense.
Yeah, also it's supposed to show that Dan doesn't just get off scot-free, because in the movie, apparently he wasn't the greatest guy. Like, he did cheat on his wife, and he then did try to force Alex to get an abortion. Is that true?
Yeah, but, like, to be fair, Alex was kind of going crazy about the abortion, too.
No, I'm not trying to excuse her actions. I'm just saying that some people were like, well, this will give him a taste of his own medicine.
Yeah, one thing that I'm glad that the movie didn't do, that the show kind of did, was the movie, when Michael Douglas cheated, when that portrayal of Dan cheated, didn't really try to give him an excuse, like a way out, being like, oh, he's actually a good guy. They did show him being like kind of mean throughout the movie. But in this show, one thing I was scared that they were doing and that they actually did was in the future storyline especially, they are trying to show Dan to be like a really good person and that he just made a simple mistake. But we see him in episode 2 sleeping with Alex multiple times.
I think they're trying to show privilege, like that he was able to advance his career, he was able to get all this stuff behind.
It just didn't come across as like authentic. You're even seeing him in the second episode.
So you don't side with Dan at all?
No.
Even though he's been in prison and that he needs to now connect with his daughter.
You're seeing him in the second episode spend time with Alex, even like at a dog park and things like that. That's why it reminded me so much of Love and Death earlier, because the characters themselves, when they're like having an affair, you just never side with them. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's fair. Did you recognize his wife, though? The person who... Amanda Peet, right?
No,
She was Betty Broderick. So, again, there's that direct
She was the main
connection.
character?
The main character, yeah. You didn't recognize
Wow,
her?
yeah, no, I had no idea who she
Interesting.
was.
Okay, yeah. So in that third episode, that was your favorite one. Have you gone through all your pros at this point?
Yeah, I'll get into my cons. The show goes at a snail's pace. And I'm not only talking about milking this, like, mediocre film out of everything that was working into multiple episodes, but, like, I'm just talking about normally just watching this show. If you were to never seen the movie, you would still be like, this is the slowest show ever.
So does seeing the movie help with the show or not help with the show?
I mean, like, you understand where the storyline is going.
Yeah.
So for the viewer, I guess if you've seen the movie, it will help.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I mean, there's not even that many references to the movie in this show. There's, like, a couple here and there. Like, I think at the very end of the third episode, there's acid that is poured all over Dan's car.
I'm sure there's a lot of Easter eggs, yeah.
Yeah.
How does the acid play a factor?
You saw Alex's character get crazier and crazier and crazier, and the acid on the car was one of the last things that she did right
What was
before.
the craziest thing? Was the craziest thing the bunny boiler scene? Because that became, like, its own expression in the UK.
Well, I guess you've never seen the movie. The craziest thing is the very ending when Alex shows up to their house and tries to kill them both with a knife.
Yes, but she's not successful in that.
No.
And she's successful in killing the bunny.
She is successful in killing the bunny.
That's why I think
I think the
one.
bunny is kind of the tipping point that you're talking about.
Oh, is that where, like, things go from you might be thinking she's a sane person to, oh, she's completely insane?
No, she's insane throughout the whole time, but the bunny is definitely, like, the last thing they do right before the knife scene. I think the acid on the car, if I remember correctly, was the thing she does before the bunny.
And she doesn't do anything to the daughter. Like, she doesn't try to kidnap the daughter or anything.
She does, actually. She does kidnap the daughter, yeah.
Does that play a role in the show at all? Like, because I know, again, he's trying to reconnect with the daughter, and do you see her in the first episode?
You see both of them. You see the older Ellen and the younger one.
And what is the older one? Because this kind of read like a BoJack episode to me, because it was like he was trying to connect and make amends for his mistakes.
That's
in the past.
why I was thinking that the show, I didn't like how they tried to redeem Dan's character, because after he's out of jail,
it's 15 years.
Yeah, but after he's out of jail, he's speaking to his daughter, and his daughter like gets hit by a bicyclist. It was a really awkward scene, and for some reason, her father's there, runs straight over. I think she might even be stalking him a little bit, and he kind of holds her by the hand. And earlier on in the episode, she was having a talk with her therapist about like how the one thing that she wants from maybe this relationship, if it were to work, would be like a fatherly connection, like holding her hand. And again,
okay, so that's a little on the nose.
Yeah. That's why I'm saying even when they were trying to do things that were supposed to be foreshadowing or supposed to be like, oh, look at that, it didn't work.
It's funny because your cons here, the film was met with universal acclaim, yes, but Boston Globe in 1987 gave it a scathing review, saying Adrian Lyne, that was the director, pulls out more manipulative nonsense than Machiavelli ever thought of. Lyne stops at nothing to provoke artificial, sentimental feelings from the audience. And that sounds a lot like what you're saying about this.
About the TV show completely. I'm giving the film more credit because, like I said, it was mildly entertaining, but I also, it came out at a completely different time. I'm sure movies weren't really like this. One thing that the movie and this TV show reminded me of was actually the 2009, do you remember this? 2009 Beyonce Knowles, Ali Larter film, Obsessed?
Oh no.
It
no,
follows the same thing where, except I don't think that the husband actually has an affair with Ali Larter.
But when you talk about obsession, the person who directed these first 3 episodes also directed the You Season 3 premiere, Silver Tree, and she also directed Flight Attendant Season 2 premiere. Both of those shows deal heavily with obsession. Both of the shows also deal with main characters who are very flawed. So I think that she was actually the perfect choice for something like this. Whether or not it was like, you got the Dirty John person, you've got the person who's done You and Flight Attendant. It feels like that merging plus Lizzie Caplan and Joshua Jackson, like that could have turned into something. Not to mention Toby Huss, who you haven't even brought up, who I don't even know if you recognize. Did you?
That's who played Mike. Because I was saying earlier on this podcast, I was like, I wonder who played Mike because the actor seems so familiar.
Okay, yeah. He's from Dickinson, the dad from that. He's also going to be in White House Plumbers, which I'm watching next. Weird Al movie. He played the dad in that.
Going back to what you were talking about, Halt and Catch Fire is where I recognize him from mostly. But you were talking about the Flight Attendant and You.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that they really kind of took the drama that they used in both those shows and infused them into Alex's storyline in the second episode, where she fakes that she had taken a lot of pills. She becomes so obsessed with this relationship, very much like Candy. That's probably the biggest comparison between the two, because even when Dan...
Yeah, she doesn't want to break up.
Yeah, because Dan is trying to leave for his house. Because all he did was call his wife and say, I'm going to be spending extra time at work. He didn't say he was going to be spending the night. So he's trying to leave, but then Alex is so upset by this because she still wants to have this affair going and basically be together with him, that she goes into a separate room, comes back out, and it's like, oh yeah, I took a ton of pills. And then Dan goes into the room and he sees that there's a ton of pill cases that are in the sink.
Yes.
And then, but when they drive to the actual hospital, what happens is Dan kind of catches her in a lie, because he's like, if you go in there and you actually did take those pills, it's going to be the end of your job. And then that's when...
And was that more effective than just seeing her try to slit her wrist like she did in the film?
Actually, her slitting her wrist was the first sign of the insanity showing up in the film, so it actually worked better than it did in the show.
It was much more jarring, I would assume.
Yeah.
And then also, because of the blood. And then also, it reminds me of that Mr. Robot episode where he goes in and steals, the card from that one that he brings her Starbucks or whatever. You remember, the fourth season? And then suddenly she's, very suicidal.
Yeah, that was, I think, the season 4, episode 3.
Yeah, whenever you see something like that, or 13 Reasons Why, it just seems a lot more significant than say, oh, no, you didn't actually take those pills.
Yeah, because, you don't even see Alex in the show say that she didn't take the pills. She just doesn't say anything and says, actually, she says, I want to go home, and then that he drives her home. And that was supposed to be, a big deal, and I was just like, this drama seems so manufactured. Right. At least the show knew or at least the movie knew what it was. At least it knew it was so over the top that they just decided to throw everything at Alex, and you could, any action that she took, you understood. Here, it didn't seem like the show had that same type of self-awareness.
Okay. So is that the end of your cons then, or...?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I give the show a 4 out of 10. I know that that's a low score, but it really just makes me wonder why this was made. I know you said they had a reason, but I can't really figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, you do know the reason. At this point, Alex Forrest is ranked number 7 on AFI's 100 Years of Villains. And clearly they wanted to redefine her character as someone who was dealing with more mental illness than people give it credit for. And they always have just assumed that she's like a crazy woman and blah, blah, blah.
But there's a lot of head-scratching moments, too. Like, for example, not even just with Alex's character, but in the future storyline, they introduce some very, very strange things that don't come into play, or must come into play later, but just felt so off-putting to see in these episodes. Like in episode 3, at the very end, you have Ellen randomly going to a skate park and skating around, but but they literally just shows her walking up, speaking to some people that she knows from school, and then just skating.
Just tangentially through this, it feels like where they're going to go is they're going to make the daughter crazy.
I mean, that might be the storyline, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to just replace Alex with Ellen, which is going to be a really dumb twist. If that ends up being true, I'm just completely throwing that out there and haven't seen anything.
In episode 2, the dog, like, rips up the apartment, Dan's apartment, or Dan's house. And, it, like, aside from them calling someone to kind of get everything replaced, it doesn't come back into play for the rest of the show. So that's what I mean by random storylines being introduced like and not being expanded on. Yeah.
Well, the show's got mixed to negative reviews. The Guardian gave it 2 stars. Time called it fatally atrocious. Decider said skip it. It has a 5.9 on IMDb, which is still higher than the 4 you gave it. Collider, though, gave it a B and said episode 3, however, feels like a slap in the face in the best way.
Yeah, well,
what does that mean?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think they're saying episode 3 is the best show. One thing I also wanted to bring up...
Is the best of the show.
Yes, but one thing I also wanted to bring up was that this title doesn't make sense. Unless they are keeping the same storyline where the wife did kill Alex, Fatal Attraction, and then Dan trying to show that he actually didn't kill Alex throughout the entire series. And if he actually didn't, then the title doesn't make sense.
I mean, a fatality can be not a murder. It's not homicidal attraction or something.
I don't know. I guess...
the fact is she's dead. Unless she's not. If she's not dead, that would be...
No, you know she is dead. At least that's what it makes it seem like in the first scene. He says that it was second-degree murder and that he did kill Alex
I'm saying,
Forrest.
Did Lizzie, Caplan's character, Alex, frame, like, him? And because that was the original ending, now that I remember it. Okay, so the original ending was that she framed him for her murder, but she did kill herself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it was a suicide that she then framed for him, and then he went to jail. Maybe she framed him.
That explains that. First off, reminds me of the Get Out alternate ending, but also that explains why audiences were so against it. Because you see the protagonist go to jail.
Paramount's executive at the time came out with like a really well-known line. It was like, kill the bitch with little discretion or something like that.
Yeah, because what happens in the movie is Dan, there's a bathtub that's overflowing, and he kind of chokes her out underwater.
Yeah.
But then
she found out she was pregnant in real life, and she was like freaked out because she didn't want to put the baby through a lot. There's a lot of like weird facts to the movie.
But that's not how she dies in the movie.
Yeah.
Then she pops up with a knife, even though she's been underwater for like minutes upon minutes, and then that's when Beth comes in with the gun and shoots her.
I can hold my breath a really long time underwater too. Anything else you want to say?
No, that's about it.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.